So we're really grateful for what God has taught us about himself, about his love, about his mission to all people born out of that love. And we're grateful for God for every life change, every baptism we've had. I know Mark's got the figures, 120, 130, something like that. Wonderful to have all those over the last 30 years. Every healing, every deliverance, every life transformed. God has been so gracious, and we don't feel anything other than gratitude to him for it, really. So grateful too for having a vision to follow, which is still unfolding. We continue to pursue the vision that he's given us with friends, in community, with the support of others. And he's connected us with folks in Lincolnshire, with ground level, but overseas as well. And what a privilege, what a journey. Now, I want to know when you first came across Threshold. So we started in 1995. Who was around between 95 and 2000? Look at that. Wonderful. Okay. Who first met us between 2000 and 2005? Okay, that's the next crew. Okay. 2005 to 2010. Okay. You mean you were born, Anaya? Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Yes, same with you, Jackie. Yeah, okay. 2010, 2015? Okay, wonderful. Some good chaps there. 2015 to 20? Okay, Kerry. Are you lost, Julia? And who in the last 5 years? Last 5 years. Brilliant. Okay, well, isn't that, just looking back, that's just brilliant. Well, for me it began before any of that, really, in January, February 1993. And you think, well, we didn't have Threshold, then what's wrong with? So we were busy being family, and I was a full-time GP. We had 5 kids. I was a steward of the Methodist Chapel in Netleham, and life was pretty busy. And I got to a point where I thought, I can't do this. Something's going to have to go. Well, the family wasn't going to go, and the practice wasn't going to go. So anyway, I thought I need to just spend some time away and get my head right. So I went to a place called Great Limber, which is up the side of Caister, where there's an Anglican retreat house. Didn't tell the warden what I was doing or what I was thinking about, but I just thought I need to just seek God and say, how are we going to square this circle? It just doesn't work the way it is. And as I spent time there, I was only there for 2 nights. I left Kath with the 5 kids and the church. So as I walked round, there were 2 things that really struck me. The first was there were 2 chapels in the village of Great Limber. One was now derelict, and the other had been turned into a garage or something. But also I saw around, there was a European binge on it at the time, loads and loads of new trees planted in lots of different areas with these tree guards, these tubes around them. And it kind of worked in my head really over those 2 days. Just the church is dying, but something's planted, living, and loads of it. And by the end of the 2 days, in my head, I had this question for God, which was, would it be possible to replant the church in Lincolnshire, and maybe beyond? But would it be possible? And I just couldn't get away from this question. And whilst on the one hand, I was thinking I needed to stop my responsibility in the chapel because I needed space. On the other hand, I had this sort of sense that something was something possible and it was needed. And just as I was leaving, the warden of the house said to me, oh, before you go, I want you to watch a video. I said, okay. And I've not said anything to him about what was in my head. And he gave me a video called The Man Who Planted Trees. And it was amazing. It was an amazing picture of transformation of Provence in France. It's actually fictional, but it's really powerful. Got an Oscar for the best cartoon, I think it was, best animated film. Do watch it if you haven't. And it stirred something in me that I knew was for me up ahead. But I went ahead and met the Methodist minister and said, I'm going to have to step back from my responsibilities here. I'm really sorry that I just can't do medicine and family and all that as well. And he sat and thought, and he looked at me and said, well, there's only one thing that makes sense to me in that, Pete, and that's if you plant a 3rd congregation of the church. And I hadn't told him anything about starting churches or about planting trees or anything like that. And so I thought, come on. But fortunately, there was a time scale to it, which made me think it was possible. So we started the 3rd congregation of the Methodist Church, which came to a sticky end through national politics a couple of years later. But out of the ashes of that, out of the death of that congregation, a little vision was still there, and a little seed was still there. And that's what started to become Threshold in 1995. So, today being the 7th, on the 14th of September 1995, we had our first Alpha Supper. And 2 weeks later, the day that we'll be having our next celebration on the 28th of September 1995, we started the Alpha course. And by the time we finished it, there were 40 people, mix of all ages, lots of kids as well. And suddenly Paul and I, I'd agreed to lead if he would as well, because I just felt too beat up to do it on my own. But I with a few rules, so will I. I said to the boys, okay, come on. He didn't really want to, bless him, but he was wonderful for 10 years. And so we led together, and we started to have to think about, oh, it looks like we've got a church. What do we do with this? And it was like, what do we do about mission? What do we do about kids? What do we do about, it was called child protection, not safeguarding in those days. What do we do about overseas mission? What? All that, suddenly we had all that to deal with. But it was a joy, and out of that, and over the decades, we get to where we are today. So, what I want to do is affirm the love that I found then and is still here, the missional courage really, and the imagination to do something different, to be enterprising and not kind of just get stuck in a rut somewhere. Now here, 30 years later, we find ourselves in a place where Threshold's changed. I know you're hearing again. Well, if you don't want things to change, don't employ someone with ADHD tendencies to lead the church. It will change. And the church has changed, fortunately, over the years. And this is a month to recognise the transition that we're going through now. And as Adam said earlier, we've changed from being one congregation to 4 hubs. So we've changed from having one congregation with one leadership and one team leader, who's been me for the years, to going to 4 hubs, all who can lead themselves now. They don't need a team leader anymore. So Adam and Lydia, and Adam and Liz, and Alan and Anne, and anybody else beginning with A. No, Nico, fortunately, has joined them here. We've got our own arrangements in Bardney, different arrangements in Norway and in Dorset. And each of them lead themselves, and each of them have their own governance arrangements, whether it's the CIO, a charity, whether it's the Lutheran Church in Norway, or the Baptists in Dorset. They all have their own arrangements. And we have a team still, but that team is not to control them. It's not to tell them what to do. I'm not their boss. None of us are the boss anymore. In fact, it's all the hub leaders anyway. We're there to resource all the hubs. We're there to be helpful if we can, to serve and to bring what wisdom God may give us at the time. So it has changed. And I'm delighted, just really delighted that Adam and Lydia are taking on this with the folks around them. So believe in what they're doing, so believe that they're called to do it together. And it's just great in my time of life to come to a place where you're just confident in those who are taking things on, and you know it's going to be okay. So that's where I've got to. Now what I wanted to say to you this morning, more than anything, is the value of values. You're thinking, Pete, where are you going now? Values are those things which we consider to be the most important. Christian values are those things about God's character which we feel we should reflect, that we think are the most important. And the way we've expressed our values more recently, we had a list of 6 or 7, but we've simplified them into 3 things which are easy to remember because they're common objects: a candle, a table, and a door. Now you've all got candles, tables, and doors, right? Anybody hasn't, I can supply you with any of those things. Candle, table, door. For us, candle represents the presence of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And we want to see the presence of God in every heart, in every life, and in every community. We want to see it, His presence in our life. Why? Because that's where He wants to be. He took the initiative, right, in Jesus coming to earth. It wasn't our idea. He wants to be with us. So, first importance is His presence, is being with Him in any way that we can. And I'm sure that going forwards, that's going to always be the key thing, whether it's in worship and prayer, reading the scriptures, whatever way God shapes us as individuals to seek His presence, to be with Him, and to be alongside him as a church, to seek him all the time. Do you remember from the Psalm 84, which Liz read earlier on, how lovely it begins, doesn't it? How lovely is your dwelling place. My soul longs and yearns for your courts, and my heart and flesh cry out for the living God. That's where we must always be. Adam has prophetic tendencies, which I'm very grateful for. And as he worship leads, he always draws us to the presence of God. That's so important. In fact, the two main things, which I'll get on to in a minute, I think, which Adam has contributed to our future in terms of vision, is the rewilding stuff and now the small boat stuff. Both are really important. I'll come on to that again in a minute. So, candle, have you got that? Presence of God in our lives. Second, table, which for us is community, lived in and lived out around a table, a place of generosity, hospitality and study. We do life together. We're not ping pong balls that bounce, or snooker balls that bounce off each other on a table randomly. We're connected to each other through relationship, through the Spirit of God, and he's calling us to do life together so that we can demonstrate his love to each other, his hospitality, his welcome, his community. All those things are part of his nature and his character, which we are to reflect. He is community in Father, Son and Spirit in the Trinity. We are called to do that. I believe we're called to do that in smaller sized communities, because you can do it a lot more effectively than when there's a lot of you together. You need a lot of you together for some particular purposes, like today, which is great. But actually, I think it needs primarily to be smaller, as you know. So we're called to do candle, we're called to do table together, and we're called to be doors. By which I mean, we need to have an open door into this community, or the smaller communities that we're part of, that people can come through over the threshold into the kingdom of God. We also need to be those who go out through the doors to the lives of those around us, to the communities that we're called to, not in some holy sanctified place where we're never seen or touched, but available to those who live far beyond the life of the church. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of the Lord than dwell in the house of the wicked, right? In Psalm 84. Also, it talks about in Psalm 84, the pilgrims, it's a pilgrim psalm, it's a psalm of ascent, which means a pilgrim psalm. They're going up towards the temple in Jerusalem. And as they go through the desert, they turn it into a place that's green. The rains come, the springs begin, the pools of water appear, and life comes in the desert. And they're the three things we're called to. Focus on God, his presence and being with him. Focus on being community, those welcoming, hospitable, open, and being those who go out through the door and welcome the strangers, the pilgrims, the friends in through the door into that community. Now, if you're going to do that, you have to have a particular culture. And the culture has to be shaped by our love for God and each other and those beyond the church. If it's not love, it's empty and hopeless. Don't try. It's got to be love first for God, for each other, and for those beyond our immediate spheres. It requires hospitality and generosity. There are many people in this room who are wonderful at hospitality. I live with one of them, and it's wonderful. It's such a gift from God to make people feel welcome and part of things. It means learning together to hear God. We have to have a culture of, and we have as a church, I believe, it's wonderful, to be able to hear God together. Not just the prophet, not just the visionary, not just the one who has bright ideas before breakfast. We all need to hear him together and confirm together that's a particular way that God is taking us. We've been trying to do that and learn that as a small community in Bardney, how we all contribute to seeing the way ahead, to the way God is speaking to us and calling us on. It means being fully immersed in both word and spirit, because that's how we hear God primarily. I think all through my life I've heard God more through the Bible than in any other way. Yes, I mean I do have extraordinary adventures, and some of you do as well. I won't go into any right now, but yeah, God speaks to us in a variety of ways. But I think the Bible, for me, has been the rock bottom, the way that's the foundation of hearing him, alongside the Spirit, as his Spirit has helped me understand things in pictures and words and adventures and other people. And there needs to be, but there needs to be a culture of change. I have a lot of connection, as you know, with churches all over the country and other parts of the world as well. And one of the chief problems at the minute and why the church is disappearing, the traditional church is disappearing in rural areas, is because they have not changed. We're working with some lovely younger folks at the moment. They cannot relate to what goes on in that building. It's called the church in some of the villages, particularly in our village. They're lovely people in there, but what they do is like alien territory to the young. We've got to change. And we've got to change in a way that, in my mind, looks more monastic, more about life together than it looks like meetings. Meetings are important, but it's not going to be just that. Now, and it was also, last point on that, got to be a culture where the young matter. Because unless the young matter, we're dead. Unless they are there to take things on, we're not going to get very far. Really delighted with Tia's appointment, working as a children and families worker, but it's all of us really that need to be engaging with those who are younger, even at our great age. I'm in the 60s, you know, but 3 months. And then back to where I said earlier about Adam and his vision, I think the rewilding thing is really, really important because it enables change. We've got to get used to the idea that God is leading us and he is replanting his church in barren areas, and it won't look like what we used to. He's calling of each of us to hear him, to cooperate with him, to set up communities of his people that don't look like anything you've seen before, because that's what's needed in a future that only he sees. And they're rewilding the sense of context being really important. It's never going to be copying, it's always got to be what's right for the community that you're considering, the one that's in front of you. The importance of context, the power of God and his imagination to transform the landscape, that's what we need. I love the way the coffee shops, the Catholic community cafe started here, the monthly one that you do. It was vision, it was prophetic, it was a sense of wanting something which the community could see the church through and the church could see the community through. And you've been faithful to that and it's borne fruit, it's wonderful. But it wasn't just, I know Liz had a lot to do with it, which was great, but it wasn't just Liz. There was other people involved in it saying, yes, that's right, that's God, this is great. And that's how the way it should be. Our call is to pray, seek, listen and cooperate, and then let God transform the landscape. And then the small boats thing, just one little story from me. When we first started building the barn, we kept bumping into Noah's Ark. Not literally, but we kept seeing prophetic stuff, or boats, or things on nursery walls, or people have a word with us. Noah's Ark was everywhere. And the gist of it from God was this: what I'm asking you to build will not make sense to those around you. What I'm asking you to do will seem like you're crackers. He asked Noah to build a boat in the desert because he knew that the flood would come. We're being asked to build small boats for a time we cannot see. We're being asked to do something which looks unusual because there's a flood coming. And I don't know what it will look like. I think it will be both good and bad. But we need to prepare. And it may not make sense, but it only will make sense when the flood comes. Yeah? So take that bit seriously, really, please. We've got to have these small communities of people that do life together, look different in each place, ready to receive, ready to be a place both of salvation and escape from judgment. I won't get heavy on you, but talk to me about it afterwards if you want to. We're now beginning to learn, apart from the 4 hubs, we've got Quan and Rio on Zoom today. Hello. Lovely to see you. Not that I can, but I know you know. So we're talking with people at the moment in Kenya, people in Spain, people in other parts of the UK, all about small boats and harbours, trying to be a connecting point, learn things together. God's expanding things out in a way which we couldn't believe was possible. But we've been faithful, we think, to what he's asked us to do. And getting Ben to do his theology is important. So, I'm finishing now. What does it look like for you? What does the way ahead look like for you? We've talked about the church. And what I want to say today is it should look like, probably, candle, table and door. Each of us need to say, I want to seek the presence of God. I want to be with him, close to him. I want him in my life. Whether it means worshipping more, praying more, reading the scriptures more, being with his people more, or just being more focused. I don't know what it means to you. We're all individuals. But that's the only place to start if you want the future to be what he has designed for us, designed for you. And the presence of God. Do life in community. Don't push off other people. It's not easy, but it really is rewarding and it's needed. That we create places of safety and hospitality and generosity that are full of the presence of God, that people needing help can find it in. And thirdly, have a door. Welcome people in, practice hospitality. Go out through that door. Engage with those who don't believe. Those are the three things I think we should look at. So, entirely up to you, of course, how you do that. But I just thought I'd outline the principles. I think the lectern's just given up, telling me it's time to finish. Did you time that, Adam? Is that a phone or a gadget for working? And just lastly from me, particularly to you in the northern villages who've known us the longest, thank you so much for looking after Kath and I over the years. Really, really appreciate it. I don't know if I've ever, I get appraised as I ask to be every year. And one of the questions on my appraisal form is, do you feel well supported? And I've always said, absolutely, absolutely. I've never felt anything but that. So thank you so much for looking after us. It's been amazing. And I don't think leaders of any kind, however much they don't like fusses like me or keeping out the way, we can't do it without knowing they're part of a community that where people love each other and are committed to each other and have the same aims. And it's been brilliant for us the last 30 years. So thank you. Really mean it. Amen.